I went to her class drunk, and she called me over to the desk, supposedly to talk about the writing assignment, but she really needed to speak into my life. She looked me in the eye, and she said, "You're better than that." And that challenge alone caused me to make a 360 and flip the script. And then the next school year, I went from a low-performing section to high-performing students. Yeah. And then it was all uphill since. But I needed her to confront me about my behavior because I was playing to my environment. And that happens so much, that you play to your environment and you lose the sense of your dream.
I am a man of honor, integrity, and promise. I pursue all righteousness. I love my family. I will not put my family in harm's way. There is nothing that will keep me from doing the right thing. I am an ambassador of hope and a man of discipline. I am a man worth following. I am a TYRO.
Welcome to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina, and today I have a special guest with me today, Brother Joseph Wilson. I'll tell you what, Joseph and I, we met probably, how long ago, Joseph?
Maybe somewhere around 5 years ago. Maybe.
Wow, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
So it feels a little bit longer than that. So yeah, about 5 years ago then. Joseph is a TYRO, and he's a leader in his community, and a man who's never been incarcerated, but just has a passion to help people become stronger and better. And I am so blessed. We are so blessed to have him take time out of your busy schedule. You drove, how long did it take you to get here?
Just a little over 2 hours.
2 hours. And you came all the way from Cleveland?
Yes, came from Cleveland.
From Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
I tell you.
Well, technically Brook Park, so I'm right by the airport.
Okay. So let's start with this, Joseph. Tell us who you are and what you used to do, because I know, and thank you so much for your service. We want to talk a little bit about that.
Yes.
Your military service and how you continue today to work with veterans and help them become stable in their lives and whatever God has laid on your heart. What else you got?
Ron, it's great to see you again. Great to get to share this space with you.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for Dr. Ron Archer that made the connection
Yes.
that led up to this opportunity to sit down together. And literally, I'm a 21st century Joseph, Ron, and I'm living my dream of a 5-year-old that dreamed about his life was to be about making a difference. And quickly dreaming about life being about making a difference, it became also my nightmare. Because at 5, I watched my younger sister die in my mother's arms. My dad disappeared for 36 years without a trace, without any communication. Wow. And
that could be hard, man. It's got to be hard.
And at that point, I'd never known my mother from that point without mental illness. It's just a matter of what level it was at and throughout my growing up years. So I went from dream to nightmare very quickly, but I realized that God was pulling things out of me even at 5 in that young age. So I've been learning to live my dream and climbing out of pits for quite some time now.
Wow. I never knew that about you. I never, we see success, and I see success. I see you a very successful businessman, leader in your community, but we don't know the backstory. Right. We don't know what got you to where you're at today and what type of blood, sweat, and tears and trauma and drama you had to experience to get to where you're at today. I have a saying that a lot of people will want your glory,
yes,
but they're not going to want your story.
Absolutely not.
Right. So in that experience, as time went on, when did you make that conscious decision? You know what? I'm not going to let this be part of my legacy. I got to change something. I got to make something happen.
I think it was probably my teen years that the only consistent man in my life from probably 5 to 19 was actually a gangster. And that gangster was my self-esteem system. And rather than turning me into him, he decided that he was going to give me a shot at being something different. So he fed me affirmation all the time, to the point that as a high school football player, Ron, I would run 5 miles to his house so he can tell me one more time. He called me by my full name, Joseph Wilson, and he's looked me in the eye. He said, "You are the one."
Now, who is this?
This was literally a gangster.
Wow.
It's interesting that in the Bible that God used a raven, a dirty bird, to feed a prophet, but he also used a gangster to get a leader.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's wonderful. So growing up in Cleveland or where you were at, it's not easy.
No,
right?
no. I pretty much, I spent a lot of years in the housing projects, but I lived there in terms of my address, but because I learned to be a dreamer very young, it transported me places far beyond where my address was.
Yeah.
So I learned to live in different places and travel to different places. In those days, the bus fare was 13 cents.
Wow.
And when I didn't have 13 cents, I had 2 Cadillacs that were my feet.
Yeah.
And they took me everywhere.
I'm your coach, Tremaine Hall. We're looking forward to getting you to the next level in where you want to be in fitness. Our whole method is to make you mentally tough and also physically strong. We're going to start with dynamic warm-up, lower core, upper body, and also full body blast. Get ready to take your fitness to the next level with TYRO Fit and Stenos.
One of the names that was given to me is Joseph.
Okay.
Right? Well, we know Joseph the dreamer.
Yes.
Right? The coat of many colors.
Yes.
And we know his story. We know that he grew up in a place where he was not wanted.
Yes.
Right? He was the stepchild. He was abused by his brothers. He was abused by everybody else around him to where they sold him. I think when I think of you, Joseph, that, you have been an overcomer.
Yes.
And you have faced many challenges. So tell us one of the greatest challenges you had to face, that you had to make that conscious decision, I'm not going to let this take me out.
Probably at the point, maybe I was middle school and I was in a low-performing academic area. We called them sections back then. I was in a low-performing academic section because I didn't know who I was at that point. And I remember going into 7th period movies, and then coming out of that, I went right into English class. And that was Mrs. Clayton's class. But I downed a shorty of gin in the movies, and I went to her class drunk.
Wow.
And she called me over to the desk, supposedly to talk about the writing assignment, but she really needed to speak into my life. She looked me in the eye, and she said, "You're better than that." And that challenge alone caused me to make a 360 and flip the script. And then the next school year, I went from a low-performing section to high-performing students. Yeah. And then it was all uphill since. But I needed her to confront me about my behavior because I was playing to my environment. And that happens so much, that you play to your environment and you lose the sense of your dream. I'm working on actually my Joseph book, The Journey of a Dream. Yes. And I talk about my 2 constant friends that stayed with me my whole life. One dude name was Dream, and the other dude's name was Determined.
Oh, nice.
And they kind of helped me at different times and different points, because sometimes the dreamer got caught up in the moment. At one point, when me and one of my neighborhood friends, Bobby, we went out for football. We became the Larry Zonka and Mercury Morris backfield overnight. But when it came time for the season, Ron, we didn't have the funds in our family to get the equipment. So it was a broken dream at that point. Yeah. And in that summer, before going into middle school, I started hanging out with an older guy in the neighborhood and started doing B&Es to get a tray bag in the court. Dream was silent. Yeah. But I was given grace. And as a friend of mine said, that I'm Grace's baby, even though Grace is not my mother's name. Yeah. But I was given grace, having done a B&E, and they knew who did it. And they said, bring us certain items back and we'll forget it. Wow. I took the grace and then began to turn it around and became a model student athlete from that point on. Wow. But it was taking those opportunities and turning those opportunities into big moments. So, I mean, listen to what I'm listening to what you're saying here. A lot of people won't humble themselves and recognize, hey, I've been given an opportunity to make it right, or I can just
stay so arrogant, so boastful and mindful in my own mindset and say, you know what? No, I'm not bringing this back. I don't care what happens to me. Because in a position of you growing up with no dad, it's easy to become bitter and angry and take it out on anything and everyone around you versus somebody coming alongside. Listen, if you return this stuff, we will forgive you and forget this thing that ever happened. And then so after you made that decision, I'm bringing it back. Because that's not easy.
Yes.
Right? You got to have courage to go face your accusers, right?
Yes.
And bring it back, make it right. Who came alongside you to help you then?
I had two fortunate at two different levels as a football player because I bounced back from that and took the grace, and then I bounced back. We moved across town, and then I had a great middle school coach that believed in me, that poured into me, that affirmed me, so much so that he positioned me to have a scholarship going into high school with one of the premier football programs. Again, it was the part of the scholarship that was not covered, we couldn't cover, so it was another supposedly lost opportunity. But by that time, I learned how to navigate the landscape and bounce back. So I went to the neighborhood high school in which I became a standout position player, became team captain my last year, and we won the city championship.
Nice.
But it was, again, taking opportunity and turning it into something great.
So you learned quickly how to pivot.
Absolutely.
You know, and a lot of times people throw in the towel quickly. They don't see another door right next to them. Look, this door's closing, but what are you going to do about it? Well, you know what? It's not for me. I'm not going to keep fighting this. They don't want me. I never get a break. You know, and we have a lot of people that we work with that have become so self-defeating. You know, we call it you're blocking your own 3-point. But you got to take that 3-point and watch where it goes. Don't block it with your own idea that you're not worthy.
Oh, I went through those phases as well. So.
Oh yeah, we all do.
I didn't escape it. It was a trend at some point that I would get to high places of achievement, and I would self-sabotage and undo it because the later I learned through a program that I went through at Ashland Seminary. Sometimes as children we buy the lie. And the lie that I bought in abandonment was I didn't matter.
Yeah.
So when I get to the high place, then I behave that belief that I didn't matter. So I somehow unravel it.
Man.
And at some point you get tired of those cycles.
Yeah.
But again, as having those people along the way, and even going to losing the opportunity to the premier high school to play football, I still became a model student athlete at the neighborhood high school, but I also had a coach that believed in me, that saw the leadership in me to where I could literally run the spring training program as a player coach almost.
Wow.
The players respond to me in that way.
So, but what I'm hearing that this theme in your journey, that you had a cheerleader at every corner.
Yes.
And you had to let that cheerleader root for you, cheer for you, tell you you're more than what you believe.
Yes.
And everybody needs a cheerleader.
Yes.
But a lot of times we'll block that in our lives. No, you don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. I've done too many wrong things that can't be me. Right?
Yes.
And what I appreciate hearing from your story, Joseph, is you said you bounce back. We say resilient.
Yes.
You're resilient.
Yes.
Everybody has that ability to bounce back. Sometimes you know, and it's good to have a cheerleader in your corner, and it's good to have somebody to tell you to your face the truth, the raw truth.
Yes.
You're better than that. What's wrong with you? Right? Let's do this, or let's fix this.
Yes.
Right? And we work with a lot of men and women who've been through a lot of trauma, been through hell and high water. But the greatest thing about that experience is they live to tell about it.
Yes.
Right? And a lot of times they become self-defeating because they don't know how to tell their story, because their story still owns them.
Yes.
So how do you get to a place of where you can take your experience and you can don't allow your experience to define who you are, but to allow it to qualify you for something greater?
Great question. And I think what worked for me is at some point I learned how I was wired to win. And it became a game changer because it helped to, as you talk about in your TYRO curriculum, it helped to cement an identity. It helped me to understand not what I wasn't good at, but what I was superior at. And then I played to those strengths because I understood how I was wired to win. And it even plays out now, getting ready to be 62, but I can do 1,000 push-ups a day.
Wonderful.
Because I understand how I'm wired.
Yeah.
And it makes sense from a very young boy that my two constant lifelong friends is dream and determined because it's consistent with my wiring.
Yes.
And when I lose sight of dream, determined screaming at me. What are you talking about, dude? You better get up from there. We're winners.
Yeah, but
we're wired that way.
I always say discipline don't walk with chumps.
There you go.
Right? And I appreciate how you personified the dreamer and determined. These two principles that you're talking about, you've been able to activate them in your life to realize that, you have like a battery. If you got just a positive terminal and it's not functioning correctly, that negative terminal, it doesn't matter if you got it's not going to work.
Sure.
They both have to work simultaneously together and they're balanced.
Yes.
Right? And same thing with dreaming and determined. Right, the dream is going to activate something.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how do you know how to turn them on?
It's become so natural to me because I've looked at too little most of my life, but it's how I see too little, and determined doesn't let me believe it's not enough.
There it is. That's it.
So we take the too little and then we create out of that. It's why Power to Become LLC exists, a veteran-owned business. It's why Power to Become Ministries exists, to make ministries our ministry. It's why now I'm working on my end game as the Joseph Center for Dream and Leadership Development, because at some point you go from being the dreamer to helping others manifest dreams.
That's right. We tell people all the time in TYRO, if your dreams don't scare you, then you're not dreaming big enough.
Yes.
Right? And that's what I hear you saying.
Dear son, it's been hard these last few years watching you grow up without me in the picture. Never taking the time to find out how you were or what was going on in your life. You're just a boy, I thought. You don't need me. I didn't need my dad. He was never around, I told myself. But I was wrong, son. I'm supposed to be a grown man. I was selfish. I was stupid. I was thinking of me, not you. If I could go back, son, and change things, I would. It's taken me all this time being selfish to finally grow up and realize I need to be a responsible man. That's what I finally learned, not from prison, but the TYRO program. It's all about becoming a better, stronger man. Wish I would have gotten it sooner. Everything looks different to me now. I'm a changed person. I know I need to be there for you now. It's not about me anymore. It's not about being cool. It's not about who I run with. It's about Mom. It's about you. It's about being a better man, learning something new in my life. It's about being a TYRO, a man worth following. I'm your dad. You're my son, and I love you. I am a TYRO. I'm a TYRO. Dad.
If you think you have what it takes to be a TYRO or just want to know more, contact your local Ridge Project facilitator or your caseworker.
I got your card here, Joseph. Power to Become.
Yes.
Now you have that in a for-profit and a nonprofit.
Yes, I do.
Right? So how do you separate the two then? What?
Well, they have two different targets. One is specifically ministry is our ministry. So we come alongside leaders in ministry. And because I have a master's in organizational leadership with a biblical worldview, is we help them to understand, first off, that everything rises and falls on leadership. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's a Maxwell concept, and being an executive program leader with Maxwell's certified team, we learn very quickly that everything rises and falls on leadership. So we work with leaders to understand how they're wired, and which opens the door for them now to understand that their people are wired to win also.
Yeah.
But then we bring them together. How are you wired to win together? Which impacts the actual organization and its growth. So as we look at from Power to Become LLC, we work across the 8 mountains of influence, which can include faith, but Power to Become Ministries is faith aimed. And dedicated to the faith-based environment, but we get to work across the 8 mountains of influence and have done it not just in the United States, but we've also done it in the Dominican Republic,
Nice.
Liberia, West Africa, and then branching out into other areas to help people that are dealing with oftentimes looking at too little, but think that that's all there is.
Yep.
It's the foundation of my wife and I's first co-authored book, which is Discover the Miracle in Your House, 10 Principles to a Breakthrough Life.
Nice.
Taking a woman that looked at too little, she lost her husband suddenly, getting ready to lose her sons, and went to seek spiritual counsel that became her personal coach to look at what she was working with. Her estimation initially was in her grief was, I have nothing. But she recovered from her nothing to look at it was small, but she had something to work with. And then having someone come alongside of you, which is the basis of our business, is that she was able to realize that she had a family-based business.
Yes.
And that family-based business solved her debt problem and also created enough wealth for them to now live and live with abundance.
Isn't that amazing? The answer is always right in front of you.
Absolutely.
Right. And, you mentioned the despair that she's going through and believing I have nothing to offer. Mm-hmm. I bring no value to the table. But once she was able to hear and listen, and somebody was able to, I got a dear friend of mine who was able to go to other countries who are very poor in their communities, but seeing the natural resources in the area, which are their abundance.
Yes.
You need to create cash flow, but you keep looking outside, way outside. But instead of just looking right where you're standing at and seeing the opportunities that can be built of what you already have.
Yes.
So a lot of times we you've heard that song, looking for love and all the, right? Yes. Looking for those answers somewhere else. Mm-hmm. When if we would just stop and take a moment, you know what? I do have value and I do bring something to the table. Now, somewhere it's written, do not despise small beginnings. And I know, I'm going to take you back a little bit, Joseph. Tell us more also about, okay, so you're doing a fantastic job today. You're leading great companies, a great nonprofit, but you were in the service too.
Yes.
How did you go from because I skipped a little bit of your journey here. When did you join the service, and how long were you in the service, and what branch were you in?
I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I did 3 active years, 2 years in Darmstadt, West Germany, where I served as a computer operator. And actually started in ministry as well in Germany and traveled throughout different parts of Europe and had great experiences in ministry as well. And then did my last year in the literally 30 miles in the middle of the desert. I knew I was in trouble. That's September 25th, 1985, when I pull up to the gate and it says Yuma Proving Grounds. 30 miles in the middle of the desert, and it was every bit a proving ground.
Okay.
Spiritually, naturally, it was challenging at that point, but it was a great time. Because God, again, was able to allow this young guy, 23 years of age, to go into a small town, the church that just lost their pastor of 40 plus years, that desperately needed revival. And God used this kid preacher to come in and bring them back to life and vibrant, and they're still going strong today. But my entrance, interestingly enough, was at a point where I went from the housing projects to a prestigious private college. with no money.
Right, okay.
No, other than I was set to go to another school on a both academic and athletic scholarship. For some reason, overnight, it fell apart.
Okay.
So now I had the dream to go to college. So I borrowed my oldest sister's car. I got on the freeway and I drove to Baldwin Wallace University in Berea, Ohio. And I obtained admission there because at that point, again, resilience was natural to me.
Yes.
It was just a matter of how I was going to succeed, not if I was going to succeed. So I get 2 years into that college experience. I lose my way. And as I look back now, I realize I was trying to drown my dream with alcohol, or drown my past and what I left behind with alcohol. So I was drinking my dream away.
Okay. Yep.
And at some point in the process, my GPA had dropped so low that the mathematicians and the computer sciences couldn't compute anything that low. So I had to figure out what was next.
Yes.
And the U.S. Army became one of those things where before leaving for the Army, I came to faith in Jesus Christ, which took me from a wine bottle to a Bible all in the same week, and joining the evangelistic team on campus. That's where I engaged Ron and worked with Ron as a Bible study leader and doing evangelism work on campus. And from there, I went into the U.S. Army, which was another one of those resilient bounce back points. That's a game changer. In my office, I have literally certificates of training, degrees that span ministry and business, different types of education. But in the middle of that wall, there's the soldier. Christ saved me, but the soldier saved the student.
Wow.
I was able to go back to the same school, Ron, where I experienced failure and stood on stage in honors celebration to receive an award.
Man, isn't God good? Man, and your journey, your story, and we said it earlier, don't despise small beginnings. And if your dreams don't scare you, you're not dreaming. All the things that you've experienced in life have propelled you to do something greater than you ever thought possible.
Yes.
The men and women that have been in your sphere of influence, in your circle, that you've been able to impact. Your company's called Power to Become.
Yes.
Where do you find that power to become what you're describing?
It's the power of the Holy Spirit is the foundation. And Power to Become as a name became our mission, because it started out as Joe Wilson Ministries, following the trend of my generation, the environment, get a ministry with your name on it. I started out with Joe Wilson Ministries, and quickly the Holy Spirit says, it's not about you. Because Power to Become was my leadership training label. He said it's more about power to become. And the same power that you experience to become is the same power that you're going to help others experience, and then build a path for them to also experience the same thing. It's the dreamer becoming the manifester of dreams in the Joseph story.
Yeah.
Because
I love the Joseph
they're
story.
dreams within dreams that really propelled Joseph in Genesis to the top. So it's the same concept. We say, bring us your dream, and then we help you also experience the same kind of power to become.
We're talking about what do we want to become? What is that definition of become? Okay, what's that look like? Power to become what? Christ-like.
Christ-like.
Right?
And some of the tools that we use, Ron, in Power to Become is to help you understand your God DNA. How are you wired naturally and spiritually to win? And they become a composite that links to clues of what do you pursue. Because initially when I went to college, I had no real clue what I would study, what I would become. Naturally, I learned to lead from natural giftings and leading through crises and experiences growing up. And I turned around as a college freshman, my first business. I inherited the print shop on campus, which was the major advertisement place on campus for staff and student, and took it from those block type and metal type and where you run the ink on it and you run the board on top of it, and then voila, you got a poster advertising an event.
That's old school right there.
Exactly. But then it helped to realize certain gifts and abilities that I had naturally, but really didn't have the guidance to develop in that way to now, how do I study this? But when I started to understand my wiring, then I began to train me. So in our business, training businesses, we don't train you until we both get some information about who we're training. Because training is good information, but unless it's training a need or bringing a solution, it's just information.
Yeah. We all start somewhere, with questions, doubts, and the unknown. But growth begins when you take that first step, when you seek the right guidance. Through insights, self-reflection, and real-world experience, you will build the skills necessary to become someone worth following. It's about overcoming your past and embracing the person you're destined to become. Growth begins with you. Empower your future with TYRO.
This is powerful because you've talked a lot about identity. And right now there's an identity crisis going on in our country today. You know, and my job, you know, one of the jobs I have is, let me point you to the true identifier.
Yes.
Who's going to identify you to come into your identity.
Yes.
Which is Jesus Christ and crucified, right? And I think if people really understood the power to become what has been intended for you before the foundation of the world, we will find ourselves in a place of the success you're describing and you're talking about.
Yes.
Taking your past experiences, the hurts and pains that you've experienced, and even in the midst of your hurts and pain, still living in your true identity, in the midst of it, living in hope, living in grace, right? I love what you said. My mother was grace, right? And you're the son of grace, because if not for the grace of God, there go I.
Yes. Right?
And I really appreciate hearing how you've been able to empower others. So real quick, I know we're running out of time, but I want you to share real quick. If you were, I'm going to have you talk to the audience in a minute, but what is the mission of your company?
Is to empower people in places. It usually starts with the leader, and which helped me to understand in my organizational leadership studies, is to understand that leaders set the environment. And people actually grow the organization, but it requires growing leaders to grow people. And then growing people grow the organization.
Love it.
So we work with both sides of the fence and then look at how do we work together? How are we wired together so we can get in sync and make the impact that we need to make on the organization? Because a lot of times we're out of sync. And I've worked with organizations where they weren't meeting their demand from their customers to get their product out the door on time. And a lot of it had to do with misalignment. You had people called things, but they weren't doing the things that they were called because they didn't know how they were wired to succeed, and then now match that up with the right positioning. So we have tools to help align you, whether you're a student, whether you're in a career, whether you're in ministry, to understand how you're wired and how does that link to your best foot forward. So I started training me to be the best me, rather than just getting educated to get educated, because now I was on a mission. I was fulfilling something specific that was unique to me.
So you learn, you practice, you teach.
Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're running out of time. So if there's anything that you can say to our audience, we got men and women, parents all across the country listening to this podcast, TYRO TV. And if there's something that you could say, one thing that could empower them to get to the next level, whatever you feel in your heart that you could give them. What I'm asking you to do is to look into that camera and just have about another 30 seconds, a minute.
All right.
Give them something.
Yes, Ron, sometimes we play out our labels, our names, our numbers, our rap sheets. And we live up to those expectations and what those things communicate to us. And we feel like we got to act them out. A lot of people that we learn over time is that they're fulfilling the prophecies even of their parents that told them, you are no good, you're never going to be anything, and you're going to wind up in prison. But I learned something from Jacob in Genesis that had to learn to wrestle his future away from his past. And as he wrestled his future away from his past, it also changed his name from the con man, the slickster, the trickster, into Jacob, the prince, the one that wrestled with God and won. So you got to learn how to wrestle with God and win in life and discover your God DNA, because it's the link to everything good that you're ever going to do. But you got to go through the wrestling point. And sometimes that's a painful experience that you got to tear yourself away from yourself. And understand that you don't have to worry about your enemy, because in Colossians it says that Jesus Christ on the cross disarmed your enemy and had given you authority over all your enemy, so your past can no longer be your enemy. So if someone Googles you and you're trying to overcome your past and they get your number and link your sheet and everything about you and your past, then you can now step into the realm where the blood of Jesus Christ washes us from all iniquity and cleanses us from all unrighteousness and literally erase our past. So we don't have to live to our past, play to our past, but we can live to our future because of Jesus Christ. I'm proof positive that you don't have to stay in the shape that you're in, and you can get here from anywhere, whether you have too little or nothing at all, as you might feel at times. But you can win, so let's win together through Jesus Christ.
That was awesome, man. That was a great word. Man, because I know firsthand that there are second chances.
Yes.
I know there's third chances. You know, and I really enjoyed this time that we spent together.
Absolutely.
I know you had a long trip here, and man, I'm blessed.
No, that was a therapy trip. That sometimes I think and dream when I leave my normal environment.
Well,
so that was a dream trip.
Well, we really appreciate you coming to spend time with us. And thank you for allowing us to be part of your journey. And until next time, always remember that I am rooting for you.
I'm Joseph Wilson, and I'm a TYRO.